Everybody loves a good life hack. If you don't know what a life hack is, they are these little things that can make an awesome impact in your life. Things like reading or cold plunges or being Reese Witherspoon, that kind of thing. So today on the Christian Marriage Podcast, I talked to a couple who came up with their own top 10 marriage hacks that they have learned over the course of 35 years of marriage. And I'm telling you, these are some of the best marriage hacks that I've ever heard. Any one of them could make your marriage fuller and more enriching than Reese Witherspoon's bank account. So let's go. Welcome to the Christian Marriage Podcast, the only podcast on the entire internet about Christian marriage that I host. I'm Nick. I'm a Christian marriage coach, and on this podcast, I talk with couples who have been recommended to me as having Christian marriages full of love and wisdom. We talk to them about how they have made marriage thrive. We tell these stories so that you can have great examples of how real couples made it through this crazy thing we call marriage so that you can build a life-giving marriage for you and your spouse. So let me introduce you to Jeff and Susan. They are from Sequim, I think is how you say it. Sequim. I think that's a place. I don't know how to say that. They're from Sequim, and they have been married for 34, going on 35 years. And something interesting about them individually, Jeff has never broken any bones, and Susan was one of the original Starbucks baristas and has met Charles Schultz. So that's pretty neat. What their favorite thing about each other is Jeff says that Susan is really, really funny, and Susan thinks that Jeff is very authentic. He doesn't put on faces for different people, which is so important. Now, I had a great talk with Jeff and Susan. They are fantastic. They're just so much fun. There is something I wanted to emphasize that they sort of brought up at the end of our conversation that I think is just so important. This list that they have been able to come up with is the product of years of figuring out what works. Jeff and Susan have a great marriage, but Jeff specifically noted that he came from a broken home and that there was a lot of stuff that he had to unlearn, and that they had to figure out, how are we going to do this together? My point is that Jeff and Susan were able to come up with this list ultimately because they were committed to their own personal growth and to the health of their marriage. Now, I strongly believe that there is nothing a couple cannot overcome, just like there was nothing that could hold Christ in the grave. But if marriage isn't feeling so good right now, what I would suggest is this. First, commit to receiving Christ's love in your life and to pouring out Christ's love toward your spouse. Second, use this list that Jeff and Susan provides as a great starting point to get some ideas of what pouring out Christ's love for your spouse would actually look like. I think you're going to find this really practical and tactical and helpful. One question that I have for you is, which of these 10 marriage hacks do you want to start doing today? Don't just take this episode and listen passively to these hacks, but listen for an actual change that you can make today. And let me know in the comments what you want to do. I listed out the hacks in the description in the episode with a number. So just comment with a number that corresponds to the hack that you want to start doing today. Also, if you find this episode helpful, would you please consider leaving a 5-star review on the platform that you're listening to this on? That would be so helpful to me. And last thing before we dive in, I'm really excited about this. I have a gift to give you. A lot of people have heard that negative interactions in marriage matter more than positive interactions. Part of what that means is that if your marriage is feeling less life giving and more soul sucking, the easiest way to make it feel better is to figure out what is causing those negative interactions and figure out how to stop them. So, the gift that I have for you can help with that. It's called The 7 Deadly Sins of Marriage Communication. This guide combines the best marriage research. This guide combines the best marriage research available with my own experience of first figuring out how to make marriage work and then almost a decade of helping Christian couples go from tension and distance to peace and love. I put it all into this guide that you can use to identify some of the mistakes that you might be making and put a cork into those negative interactions and helps provide some solutions that you can do instead of those mistakes so that you can make a marriage full of peace and love for you and your spouse. There is a link in the description to this episode, so go and get the 7 deadly sins of marriage communication right now. With that, let's dive into Jeff and Susan's top 10 marriage hacks. Jeff and Susan, thank you so much for coming and being with me on the Christian Marriage Podcast. And I'm really excited because you chose to talk about kind of a top 10 list of things that, as you look back on it, have been really helpful for your marriage. I think you were thinking of kind of practical, kind of tactical decisions and practices and disciplines that you wanted, that you just know have been really helpful to your marriage. So I know a lot of people really, are hungry for, like, what do I do? How can I ensure uh, that I have a good marriage? And some people are really, doers and kind of almost task oriented. And so I think this is going to be really helpful for them, especially because I know that you guys come really highly recommended as a good, strong, faithful couple. And so I'm excited to see what you come up with. So all that to say, thank you for being here, and I'm excited.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. We want to, before we jump to the practical, we do want to underline from the beginning, our relationship has been one that has been submitted to the Lord. And we walked in with a commitment to Christ individually, and we walked in intentionally with having Jesus as Lord. So I can't say that strongly enough. I think it does make a difference who the Lord of your life is in terms of the application of how your marriage works out. Now, the challenge is oftentimes in the Christian world, what happens is we over spiritualize our marriage as if,
Mm-hmm.
if we just pray enough, or if we, do devotions together, if we do insert all of these spiritual exercises, that somehow intrinsically is going to result in a godly
Yeah.
marriage. And let's be clear, you ought to pray together, scripture, worship, attend, all that stuff should be a part of your marriage. So we're starting this conversation with those as an understanding, as kind of the foundation. But then over time, we've discovered a few things that kind of, like you said, tactically or practically have made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I love that there is that foundational piece. And I think what you're saying is that without that foundation, like whatever kind of tactics you have, they're not going to be built on something that can sustain it. So I like mentioning here at the front, like, we're talking about, you're almost talking about, okay, if we're like building a building, and the better the marriage gets, the higher the building is, or whatever. It's almost like we're talking about floors like 10 and above or something like that. And but we do need a good solid, foundation to that building, is I think what you're saying.
Right, and statistically, we do know that I'm a minister, so I interact with lots of people, and I interact with couples who are married much longer than us, and um, and they of course talk about their faith, but they also talk. Some of these things that we've learned are echoes of what we've heard some of these other folks mention as well, that we also found helpful.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that I think we would say, and this is, you can't really do this practically, but again, as a understanding of kind of the beginning of our marriage, there's nothing like getting in your Honda Civic and driving 3,000 miles across country away from your home and family and all those networks, and having to depend on each other. And it worked for us. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but traveling 3,000 miles and living for a couple of years away from the family dynamics um, allowed us to create some connections.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, starting with the foundation of Christ.
Yeah.
And if the Lord is the number one relationship for each of you individually,
Yeah.
um, that will naturally be a part of your marriage.
Right.
So we're very, very blessed that that's how we came into the marriage.
Yes.
Is our number one relationship was between myself and the Lord, Jeff and the Lord. I know not everyone comes in that way, but we are blessed to have that. And then also, as Jeff pointed out, um, starting our marriage shortly after we're married, moving away, far, far away from all the support.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we didn't have instant communication. Um,
Yes.
so, we weren't FaceTiming family members or texting or any of that. It was he and I,
Right.
the two of us out there, on our own.
For sure.
And I think it started us off on a really good, trajectory where we look to the Lord and we look to each other because that's how it was established.
Yeah, for sure. No, I talk about the first number of years in our marriage actually pretty similarly, that we got married, and then in like 6 months we moved out to like all the way across Pennsylvania, basically. So like 6 hours away, and so that I could go to seminary. And I think that was really helpful for us. I think that was yeah. You didn't. I mean, we did have cell phones, and we did have kind of instant communication, and even then, it was very helpful. Um, you know, at very least, whenever you're mad at each other, you don't have. You either drive you don't have your mom's house to like drive to, right? It's either drive to the bar, which feels shameful, and like, okay, I'm definitely not going to do that, or you just you drive back home, and it's like, okay, I guess I'm driving back home.
Well, this is why the biblical authors are so wise. The encouragement to leave and cleave.
Yeah.
You know, and I think with, as Susan said, with those two um, anchors, Christ and depending on each other, I think then that these practical steps make more and more sense.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I would say, and these are not in particular order;
Mm-mm.
they're just a list. Okay,
I mean,
so
I was imagining, like some ESPN, like, top 10, so, but that's fine. That's fine. You can do them in
I'll
whatever
tell you
order.
why it's hard. Each of them have been particularly important, and at certain moments they were number one.
Yeah. Okay.
At other times they're in the back burner, if you will.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I'm excited. So, yeah, let's go.
that's why. So one of the things you can go first.
What were you going to say?
Well,
Which one?
it doesn't matter.
Because they're in no particular order.
In no
Exactly.
particular order. That's fine.
Exactly.
Well, I'll just, because I'm linear, I'll go with what we have on
I
here.
knew you would.
Something that Jeff and I started doing early on is we would set goals for our marriage,
Okay.
for our family. You know, the beginning it was just the two of us.
Yeah.
But where do we want to be in 1 year?
Yes.
Where do we want to be in
Mm.
3 years, in 5 years? And we would have kind of an annual meeting, State of the Union
Yes.
time, where we would see, you know, where are we at? Let's revisit this goal. And where are we at? Is it still the priority that it was a year ago?
Yeah.
Or has it been altered? But I think doing that, what was so helpful about that is it helped with intentionality.
Mhm.
I think you can just go on day after day and get into a rut and not really having movement forward. And, you
Yeah.
know, I think we both feel that, you know, we want our marriage is great, but we're not satisfied with great. We want it even better than that.
Yeah.
And if this is my primary after the Lord, my primary relationship, I want it to be the best it's going to be.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure we're on the same page because it could be very easy for a person to start getting their own ideas about how things should be. So having
Right.
these goals that you look come up with together and then revisit to see how you're doing.
And these are goals like regarding the relationship, regarding finances, regarding,
Yeah.
in our case, positions that we would apply for. Do we feel still called to this particular church, or is the Lord wooing us to some other place? So I mean, really, it it the subjects of the goals were really quite broad. When kids entered in, that adjusted our priorities as well.
Would you
So
have like any were there set areas that you would purposely check in on during your State of the Union thing or not?
yeah, we would always our marriage, how are we doing, was always the priority. And so we would talk about frustrations that we had with she with me. She's idyllic, but we would talk about frustrations and, okay, why did that trigger us? So what might we do to have that not be an issue next year?
Yeah.
Or so that was one. Finances was always an issue because as ministers, you don't go into it for the lucrative uh, benefits. And
Benefits,
so
yeah.
you have to be wise. And as we know, finances is one of the top two reasons that couples struggle. And so
Mhm.
that was always one.
Yeah, I remember we wanted to be able to buy a home in a certain number of years, but we also had student loans and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, since we both have this same goal, what can we do to achieve this goal? And
Yeah.
so, you know, we came up with a plan where we were going to move from a home that we were renting
Yeah.
to a smaller apartment because the rent was less.
I gotcha.
And we would set aside, you know, we were able
Mm.
to, okay, if we save this much amount of money, then this student loan can be paid off by this date.
Yeah.
And then we can start rolling that into our savings for
Mm.
our
That's
home,
good.
our payment. So that's what I mean about if you're not intentional about these things and take actual measurable steps,
Yeah.
you'll probably never get there.
It's
And
good.
it's so critical that you're on the same page.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so that when you're in it together, if you don't have a conversation, one person's going to say, gosh, I want to save money for vacation. And someone else will say, I want to save money for, whatever. I
That's
want to
good.
go out to dinner more.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. No value judgment. It's just,
But if you're not talking about it, then it can create division.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And you know, we don't have communication actually on our list, but that's what it is, right?
Yeah. Right.
I mean, this is a concrete example of healthy communication.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I love the purposefulness and the, you know, and just kind of prioritizing, n knowing that life is going to get away from us if we don't sort of, impose ourselves and order and wisdom onto it. It will get away from us, so we have to be purposeful about it. And that's no less true in marriage and life and etc. Yeah, so that's good. All right. So next, what else we got?
I think another one that is important is uh, laugh more.
Mm-hmm. I like that. All right,
You
tell me a
know,
joke. Tell me a joke. Go.
well, we're not joke
He's
tellers.
not very funny. Uh,
So wounded. That was
Okay, so well, Susan's the comedian then. Okay.
you know, you just sometimes we just take ourselves way too seriously,
Yeah.
way too serious.
and and you shouldn't laugh at I don't laugh at her. I laugh when we're laughing. I can't believe I just said that. That's the dumbest thing ever. Or
Yeah.
hear what I'm saying, right? Just kind of that.
The
Uh,
ability to laugh at yourself actually is part of what you're saying, at least.
exactly. And I think when you have that spirit of laughing more, you're just looking at life with through a lens of joy. And so you're gonna notice when she does something that's beautiful and funny, and or something happens as you're driving somewhere. I just think the more you nurture laughter and joy in the relationship, it just allows it fights against allowing residual hurt to build up.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like having inside jokes with your spouse. You know,
Yeah.
just things that just the two of you know and that are hilarious. And then you can look at each other across a crowded room and you know what the other one's thinking.
Yeah.
And because it's, you know, some inside joke and it's only funny to you two, but it's hilarious. And, you know, there should be laughter and joy in marriage. I mean, God created it. It's a beautiful thing and it should
Right.
be fun. And we can't take ourselves too seriously.
For sure. Now, real quick question. So, for anybody who might be, maybe trying to, okay, that sounds great, but how, I'm kind of uh, just kind of mad at my spouse now, or maybe for a long time. Like, how would looking for things to laugh about together? What would you say to that person? Like, what's the first step in creating and having more laughter together?
Look in the mirror,
Mm.
right?
Okay. Yeah. What do you mean?
Well, what I mean is, when we're mad or we have an issue with our spouse, just look in the mirror for a minute, and you'll see your anger at her. In our case, uh, well, what about me, right? I
I
mean,
got you. Right.
so I think partly looking in the mirror and recognizing that my irritation or frustration uh, towards her pales in comparison. The irony that what she's
Yes.
done is nothing compared to what I did yesterday or whatever. And so I
and
think,
actually and actually being able to like appreciate like the irony of, oh my gosh, like how ridiculous that I would be like this, when I can think of 3 instances last week that, you know, I did the same thing, right?
Yeah, I would also say look back
Mm-hmm.
because surely there are times in your relationship um, when you did laugh together. And what was so funny then? You know,
Yeah.
we forget about these things when we're in the middle of a heated moment.
Yeah.
What 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 did we laugh about in the past?
Right. Yeah, that's good.
How can we resurrect that?
Like,
Um,
do more of what worked for you in the past. If things are hard, especially like what worked in the past, let's focus on what worked for us in the past as just like a way to actually break things up a little bit, I think is what you're saying. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I just read a book this month about it's called Humor Seriously, and it's kind of just about the benefits of basically what you're describing, and how people who build a habit of looking for lighthearted, kind of just humorous things actually have a lot better results in relationships, at work, in life, like that kind of stuff. So it's just funny. Uh, yeah, it's funny.
There,
um,
there's times where I'll see something funny, a meme of something,
yes.
and I'll send it to Jeff because
Yeah.
he'll think it's funny too.
Yeah.
Um, so it's including your spouse in those moments when you have
That's so
left.
good. Yeah, even just think like it takes extra effort to send that text to your spouse. Like, but the thoughtfulness of, oh, that was funny and I enjoyed that. But just taking that extra step of, I'm going to take that joy and I'm going to share the joy with my spouse. I think
Exactly.
that's such a practical, extra step to take. So I love that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, might naturally do that with a girlfriend or a friend,
Yeah. Right.
put your spouse in that spot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Them.
Cool. So number 3 or number 7 or number 8. I
Yeah.
don't know which way we're going, but what do you got next?
Okay, getting really practical. Share schedule intimacy.
Okay. Yeah.
So we discovered early in our marriage that Jeff's a night owl
Okay.
and I fall asleep about 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Um, and so where he could be spontaneous and up all night, I no, I'm I am too tired.
Business shuts down at like 8:30,
Yeah. And then, you start raising a family, children.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep.
there's so
Career.
many things that force you to put your spouse, not force you, but end up putting your spouse and your spouse's needs down the list of priorities.
Yeah.
Because you
Right.
take it for granted, right? We're good.
Yeah.
We've got this.
Yeah.
So we can just not attend to some things that you obviously should attend to.
Right.
Mhm.
Now, just to be clear, now intimacy is a bigger category. Are you thinking mainly of sex or like other types of intimacy too?
Well, all of it could be, but I was thinking specifically of sex.
Yeah. Okay. But
So,
I mean, it's probably worth saying that, like guys maybe could hear, or, stereotypically, right? Some people need to hear this and say, you know what, I need to schedule intimacy with my wife by, getting a reminder to write her a note or something like that. Like that also would be technically a good idea. But um, scheduling sex also is there's a little bit of, I've heard very strong opinions about the idea of scheduling sex. So real quick, like why do you think that worked for you guys? You know, I think what I've heard is often one party is just like, that's so ridiculous. It just feels so forced. Like I can't, I need more lead up time. And to be fair, I think a lot of people, they will schedule sex and then use this sort of spot on the calendar as some sort of expectation and way to almost like sue their spouse for what they promised or something like that, which is probably not the best, way to use that teaching. Um,
So, Nick, I think that what I would say is if you, when we talk about scheduling sex, we're not saying 7 p.m. on December 8th in the bedroom,
Yeah.
all the specificities.
okay.
What we're saying is on Thursdays, we're going to do this. And so that means obviously sex requires a buildup. I mean, you can't, yeah. Oh, well, guys,
Okay.
uh, 50% of it doesn't take much, right? But
Yes.
the truth is recognizing that, hey, tonight's we're going to, or sending a text or sending a note or sending flowers
Yes.
or giving a back rub, kind of build, so it isn't just nothing and then 0 to 60 in 10 seconds.
Yes.
That putting it, scheduling it requires intentionality to build up so that when 7 o'clock on December, whatever happens, there's been the build up that because otherwise it could feel very mechanical.
Susan, Susan, you sort of heard what I was describing, and you were like offended. You said, "Wow."
Well, and like what we would put on calendar is appointment.
Yeah.
So it was like time was blocked off
Yeah.
for us,
I gotcha.
the two of us, and it was sacred time. It's sacred time where neither of us will put another appointment during that time.
Yes. Okay.
Or will, so there's that where it's very sacred. It's just for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inside language, so no one else knew what appointment was on our calendar.
Yeah, that's good.
Now all of you know.
For anybody that can see Susan and Jeff's calendar now is gonna.
But also, I think for me as a woman, knowing that I'm going to have that uninterrupted time with him,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
just makes me feel so valued, and that it won't get taken up with, that easily could. And that's what I mean about scheduling it. It can easily get put on the back burner.
Yes. Perfect.
And life is busy, and your own personal rhythms of, going to sleep early or getting up early or whatever may not sync with each other.
Yep.
And so being intentional about having the sacred time together is what I mean about scheduling intimacy.
That's perfect. Yeah. I can't tell you how many couples that I meet with that they have the same kind of problem. Like, it's just so difficult to get time together. And it becomes an actual real difficulty that's for some reason, there's also this block of, well, there's nothing that we can do. That's just the way that it is. And what are you to do? Right. But you're saying, look, you have to figure it out. Well, I guess that let me ask you that just to go a little bit deeper. Like, so the fact that you both were on different schedules, what was like the most helpful thing in actually making that, in actually making and keeping that priority? How did you set that time in the calendar?
Just for probably more self-disclosure than you're interested in, but there was a moment in time where it was a source of frustration for one of us.
Sure.
More than the other.
Yeah.
And part of this really was birthed out of our annual goals. Hey, I want more physical intimacy.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was, I'd been thinking it a long time, but how to communicate in a way that wouldn't undermine or devalue my beloved, right?
Yeah.
So I had to think of how to even raise the question. Yeah. And so we had a real honest conversation that I desire more. And so then now we have the same goal. So then it's working backwards. Okay, you go to bed at 9, I go to bed at 2 a.m. You're right. It's true. Yeah. But, and so it was really because we had the same goal, then we work backwards.
Yes.
So what does that look like? And the other thing I would
figure it out
say is I think there's also a fallacy of what physical intimacy is. And that is, Hollywood tells us it's a spontaneous, eruptive experience where the fireworks go off and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Susan's been so good at is, obviously there's the joy, the physical component, but it's also the emotional component. It's also the relational component, the intimacy of heart to heart, spirit to spirit stuff.
Yeah.
So I think partly the world lays out an expectation that's unrealistic. So the two of you have to communicate on what does that look like for you. And maybe for some it's I'll let it go on any specificities. But it's
Sure,
going
right.
to be different for each couple, but you two have to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, that's good. No, I think that's really helpful. Okay, number 7.
All right, number 7, I'll go, or whatever number this number. How about this will be number 11? I don't know. And that is one of the things that we discovered, and me particularly, is decompress before you get home.
Okay.
So I'm fairly driven, and so I get wrapped up in my work and all of those things, and it would be really easy to take the issues from work, and I imagine this happens to anyone who works.
Yeah. Who's a
You
driven
can take
person?
it
Yeah.
home with you.
Yeah.
And one of the things I discovered is, particularly anyway, when I was a particularly stressful day or a particularly intense day, I would drive home with my windows open to get the wind in my face to kind of set, like, I'm in
Yeah.
a different time zone. I'm in a different zone now.
Yes. Yes.
And that was proved very helpful. I think because then when I would get home, I think I was more fully present.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Really make that hard transition away. Like, I'm leaving one thing and I'm entering this whole other thing. That's really good. Yeah. Yeah. So that's awesome. Let's so what's next? Number 6.
Something that we found really helpful was, the Gary Chapman's love languages.
Yes.
So that came out, I don't know when, in the
80s.
90s, I thought. Um, Learning to speak each other's love language fluently.
Yeah. Okay.
So, surprise, surprise, our love languages are different. Um, and so learning, that was kind of eye-opening for me that he
Yeah.
doesn't think the way I do.
Yeah.
Um,
Who knew?
Shocking. But trying to put myself in the mindset of how does he interpret this? What um, what kinds of things are going to fill him up,
Yeah.
which is different than me. So, for instance, my primary is acts of service.
Mhm.
That's not even on Jeff's secondary, but his primary was physical touch.
Yeah.
I say was because they do change over time.
Sure.
Um,
Sarah still isn't number 1, honey.
I know, still not for you. Um, and so realizing, when I'm holding his hand, when I'm, sitting close to him, that's really um, filling up his tank.
Yeah.
And one thing, like when we were first married, like if he was working on something in the garage,
Yes.
never understood this. He wanted me to just sit out there with him.
Okay.
And I was like, really? I have other things to do? This to me, I could be doing, so many other
Yeah.
things. But once I read that book and understood that that was his love language,
Mhm.
was just having me present, well, then all of a sudden I have a different approach to it
Right.
because
You
it's
can,
not my time, it's filling his tank.
and
And
it's
he's
a
be more able to fill my tank if his tank's filled and vice versa.
okay. So it's like mutually
So
beneficial.
you were frozen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
You said,
So, man, how do I want to do that? Yeah, because I don't know when it froze. Sorry, this is actually more complicated than you would think it would be.
You'll have to
Um,
edit this.
yeah, yep, yeah, probably. Let me just kind of summarize what I heard you say, and then I'll just kick it back over to you. So you're saying that in learning this category of, oh, we are actually different and we experience love differently, it actually let you choose to give to the other person, even if it was completely sacrificial on your end, and and you were able to make that choice because you knew the purpose for it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
So let me, this isn't part of the notes, but Susan's mom is staying with us, and her dad passed away 9 years ago.
Mhm.
And so I asked Judy, your mom, I said, what was the basis of your long marriage to Cliff? And she said,
Putting the other first.
Yeah.
So she said, if you are wanting the other person's happiness, you're putting them first. And they are wanting your happiness by putting you first. What's first?
Yeah.
So
and I think when you,
words from my mom.
that's right.
She's
That's
80.
great.
Right.
So I think this speaks to this because when you put love for the other person as the priority, and you're both doing it, it just sets you up for a completely different disposition. And so
Yeah.
when Susan would be out in the garage when I'm doing X, or I'm washing the dishes in the kitchen, we're communicating to each other the value and our love, because I wouldn't intrinsically wash the dishes and she wouldn't automatically sit out in the garage or whatever, right? So when you're showing the other person practically the value of love, your love for them.
And it kind of strikes me again, like, how do you get to the point where you can even do that? Because like you said, you would never even have occurred to you, Susan, to just go and sit in the garage with him. So it kind of again comes back to communication, and well, you have to talk about what you want. And I think for you guys, just reading the book that kind of put these categories in your face, that was helpful to kind of stir up communication. But really, I really would like that. And you have to let the other person know and communicate about it and go from there. Yeah.
So on the sitting in the garage
Like you're just
story.
sitting out in the garage.
Yeah. So here's
He's
the
building something.
the rest of the story is, originally I wanted her to sit out there for the whole time I was doing Project A.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't need her to be there for the whole time I'd be doing that. She was there when it started.
Yeah.
Just those few moments, those few minutes were,
He was giddy.
yeah, that's all I needed, right? And
Okay.
because I wanted her to be happy. I know that sitting out in the garage for 3 hours isn't particularly exciting. So, you figure it out. And anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, and you were able to say you realized, I think you're saying you realized that you liked that, and you were able to eventually communicate like, hey, that was really nice. Can we do that some more or something like
Right.
that? Right.
I
Yeah.
just need 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
come on.
Just get me started, honey.
No, it's good. All right, we're cracking the top 5, even though it's not in any
Sure.
actual order. But what's next?
This next one is a top 5.
Okay.
And that is, don't take it personally.
Oh yeah, okay, like it.
Yeah.
But it
And that's
is personal, isn't it?
probably,
Isn't it?
Exactly. You're married.
I would say in our marriage, I'm the one who's more apt to take it personally.
Okay.
You know, it's why'd you give me that look? Or, why aren't you um meeting my needs?
Yeah, sure.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, or the tone. Maybe he'll use a tone that I'll take personally as an attack on me.
Yeah.
When he's like, "What are you talking about?" Um, but a lot of times it has more to do with how I'm feeling about myself at the time, I'm sure, than anything that he has done or said. Um, so it's having a little, just stepping back and asking yourself, is this an attack or not? And it's not.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested, Susan. So you're saying, so that's kind of. By the way, I I love the self-awareness that you're showing, that, you're like, yeah, I probably tend to take things more personally, quicker, and that kind of thing. So even knowing that about yourself, I think is a helpful category up front, right? And I can definitely take things personally, as well. For you, Susan, in stepping back, is there kind of like a thing that you do or something? What is helpful in getting you to say, whoa, I need to like step back and take account of what's going on? Is there anything that you do that's helpful there?
I would say probably just, this is from years and years of marriage and getting older and wiser, and things don't bother you as much
Yeah,
as they did when you're younger.
sure.
Uh, but I would say for me, it's like we just remember who he is and his
Mm-hmm.
love for me.
Yeah, okay.
He's not intending to hurt me.
Wow.
That would that's not his character.
Yeah,
So this is pretty sure it's not about me. I
yeah,
just need to, um, maybe I need to actually pray for him, that because maybe there's something else going on at work, or, the church, or things that he can't be, you know,
yeah,
as transparent about. And, we often, the ones we tend to, um, maybe the ones that we know we can be the most ourselves with tend to get
yeah.
the rawer side of us.
Yes. That's a good way to put it.
So it's probably not about me, it's probably something else going on. And he, more than anything, needs to not have me add on to that right now by taking it
Getting,
personally.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So kind of using the history of your relationship to as almost evidence of, look, I know that he wants the best for me. And that kind of helps you get into a mindset of, you know what, maybe it's probably nothing. If it is something, then we have a foundation to build on and like repair the offense that you're feeling anyway. And so using that what you know about him to fill in the gaps for what in the moment, like, you're not sure, did he mean to attack me there, did he not, like, so using the known to fill in some of what feels uncertain at that point. Yeah, that's great.
And let me insert here, there have been moments where we have said unkind things, right? There have been moments where we have intended it to be less than grace. Um, but even in those moments, we have a choice to think she's mad at me now, or she's reacting, but I'm going to choose to look at the last 35 years and realize that I probably, frankly, I probably deserve it.
Yeah,
But I know that over 35 years, I know that's a momentary thing, not a break in our core relationship, right?
yeah,
It's a momentary bubbling up of probably unrealized expectations and
right.
such.
And that's before we kind of go to the next one. I think that's a very, like, this is where the foundation really comes in, right? Is if you are trying to love your spouse like Christ loved the church, then even when you really do feel offended, or even when there really was an offense that was done to you, you still have the opportunity to be gracious.
Yep.
And so even in the worst case scenario, when there was an actual, you know,
Infraction.
infraction, yeah, um, you you can choose to be like Christ, and because that's how Christ loved you. You were literally offensive to God,
Exactly.
and he gave you blessing and kindness and goodness, and that's that's something that we can choose to do. So even there, like, it's like, why would we ever do that? Well, that's how we've been loved. So
Yep.
of course, like, we ought to try at least to do that. So that's part of where that foundation sort of empowers these sort of tactics. I think in a good way, or in a real way.
Yeah.
Okay, so sounds like we have about 4 more. So what's next? This is good. I think these are very, very helpful. So what do you got?
Keep short accounts. This is kind of going off on what we've just been talking about. Um, to let things build
Yep.
and to um, kind of keep a track record of how many offenses he has committed against me.
Yes.
And that is just so deadly to a marriage. You need to come back together quickly and resolve the issues and then let them go.
Yeah, Paul was pretty smart in 1 Corinthians 13, right? Keep no records of wrongs. And
Yeah.
I think that I think some folks it's easier to do this than others. So
Yeah.
I'm
like
I'm someone that doesn't really that's not my issue. I don't keep I'm intense in the moment, but after the moment it's past.
You've moved on.
right.
Yeah. So I recognize this is easy to write on paper. It's easy to say it. It's really hard if your spouse has been unfaithful. It's really hard if you feel like the other person has contempt for you, right? I get that it can be really, really hard. But if you can develop this pattern early in your marriage and just commit to it, I think it would resolve so much unnecessary pain and unnecessary stress in a marriage.
Yeah, for sure. Doing it early, that is the kind of thing that can really fester. But at the same time, there's no better time to start than now. So even for, even hypothetically somebody who's stuck in that bitterness, it's not like you're also just, well, I'm not a person who can forgive or be gracious. I'm just not, like, that's just not the kind of, or the person that I am, right? We're all called to improve in that, and any ability or any decision that a person would make to be a little bit more forgiving than they were, and keep just a little bit shorter accounts than they have previously, is going to have such a big impact on your relationship. So yeah, absolutely.
I read somewhere someone wise said, don't let the anger go, don't let the sun go down on your anger. I think I read that somewhere, and that's been a commitment we've made. And one of the things that doesn't mean that every night of our marriage that we haven't had an unresolved issue,
Yeah.
but we've been committed to resolving the issue. So it may be that, okay, it's like she goes to bed at 9, it's 10 o'clock. She's not going to be in a position in a place to have an ongoing conversation about it.
Right.
So we haven't resolved it, but we're committed to resolving it. And
Yes.
so I don't want to have this fantasy that, oh, before I go to bed every night, it's going to be all solved.
Right.
Well, it doesn't work that way. What it does work at is I'm still kind of ticked off at you, but we're going to work this out. And tomorrow night, after dinner, we're going to, wrestle this out. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I want to be clear. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. It's a great ideal, but know each other well enough to know that that just may mean that you have to just articulate, we are going to resolve this.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And
It's not going to be a threat to our relationship
Exactly.
in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
I was going to say, choose your language
Okay.
carefully.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are having the meeting of the minds to shorten the account, um, don't use the words never or
Mhm.
always.
Yeah.
Someone give me that advice early on because it's just simply not true
Yeah.
to accuse someone of never doing something or
Yeah.
always doing something. So I think language is really important because when you use those kind of words, the other person's going to immediately get very defensive.
Yeah.
Um, and it's going to be really hard to shorten that account um, if that's how you speak to each other.
For sure. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I hope that people would hear like there's you don't use that for reasons like you're also supposed to talk about yourself and like use speak about your own experience.
Mhm.
And I've known couples that will be like, well, I feel like you always, and that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, you're
Oh,
really missing the point of the
exactly.
fact that you're trying to communicate something for the other person. Like you're trying to build the other person up as you're communicating. So why would you not say always or never? It's because it doesn't build up. And so that's why you would want to not do that, right? And yeah, so that's good.
Okay, I'll move on.
Yeah.
Next thing is, I think remind yourself regularly about why you married that beautiful person.
Mhm.
One of the things it's all we just we're new at a church, been a year and a half, and one of the beautiful things about coming to a new church is they don't know, nobody knows your story.
Yeah.
And so, we've gone to dinner and all these things, and there's opportunities again and again to retell the story of how we came together. And it's just, it is just fun
Yeah.
to remember, gosh, I won't tell you the story, but, it just, the what.
Right.
And I think there's just such power when you tell that story as opposed to that I'm irritated or she's not meeting my needs or all the other
Hmm.
narratives that we might produce. But to remember, she's the one and she's still the one, right? After 35 years. And
For this reason and this reason and this reason, and like being specific about what
exactly.
those things are is part of what you're saying. No,
Yep.
that's good. Yeah, that's good. All right. What's the I think I if I'm counting right, there's you had two more in mind. What do you
Okay.
got?
Nurture your faith life individually and
Hmm.
as a family. So,
Man, how do you do that?
well, I remember when we were dating and Jeff was on staff at a church, it was before seminary. And I had this kind of this fantasy when we started dating that it was going to be this spiritual experience and he was going to be um, leading me in prayer and we're going to do studies together and all of this stuff,
Yeah.
which was putting a lot of pressure on him to be my spiritual
Hmm.
everything,
Yeah.
and it was taking off of me the responsibility of nurturing my own spiritual life.
Yeah.
So it's not your spouse's responsibility to make sure your relationship with the Lord is what it should be.
Yeah.
That's your responsibility.
We nurture, we encourage.
Right.
Yes. You're not hands off at all.
Yes. Yep.
But it'd be like saying, I don't have my relationship with the Lord is just dry right now because my husband isn't,
Mm.
leading me down that path as he should.
Yeah. No, that's good. I know a lot. I actually, I've talked with a number of couples through the years who, this is going to sound stereotypical, but I don't know, it's been my experience that there's been a number of wives who kind of get stuck in this, like, he's not leading me, type of, and it turns into like a bitterness. It's this deep desire that they have to be with a husband who leads them well and helps them grow and stuff. And I mean, that's he should do that. But it turns into this real bitterness. And what you're saying is he's your God, like it's your relationship with God. Um, like God has empowered you by the Holy Spirit to build that relationship. So like let's go, like do it. You know,
Mhm.
seek God with your own zeal, I think is what you're saying.
Right. Right. And then along with, when you have kids, and I mean, we're really pleased. Our children are 31 and 28, and they have their own relationship with the Lord as adults. And there's nothing that makes us happier than that. And I think part of it is it was just in their DNA. Right, growing up, it was just what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Lord as the center. We look to the Lord for direction. We bathe things in prayer.
Yeah.
It's not because we have to.
Right.
It's because we want to, and that's how he designed us, with this need, this longing for him.
Yeah.
Um, so I think when it's natural like that, it's nothing to rebel against or
Yeah.
not want, because
Right.
it's something natural. So I think developing your faith life individually is so important, but then also having a natural expression of faith in the family and with your spouse, and not having it be some forced
Yeah.
um to do thing. It's just natural, and it's because of our love for the Lord.
I
Right.
think people would kind of where people struggle with that is they have that idea of like of and an expectation of what a spiritual home or a spiritual um life as a family looks like, and then they see that not happening, and their expectation is thwarted. And so you're saying you need to be able to accept like the faith that your spouse has and kind of rejoice in it actually, and hey, how can we kind of support each other in each other's faith, but it's much more of kind of an up of like a growing from the roots, not top down type of thing that you're describing, I think.
Another thing I would say in line with this is, and this is going to sound a little self whatever because I'm a minister,
Sure.
but I think I can't say enough about the value of being connected in the life of a church,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because that also diffuses the responsibility of her being the all or me being the all. All of a sudden, there is this network of people
Yeah.
offer us different glimpses of intimacy with Jesus. And I would say that part of our children's adult discipleship is obviously a reflection of us, but I can name adults who were in their lives as children who maybe had even more impact. I don't know more, but profound impact on,
Yeah.
oh, they're not minister and minister's wife, they're a lawyer or they're a
Yeah.
firefighter or they're right.
Right.
And they have the same love for Jesus that mom and dad do.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough about the importance of the body of Christ
For sure.
strengthening our individual relationship with the Lord and then our relationship with the Lord together.
No, absolutely. No, so vital. Yeah. Yep. All right. What do we have? One more, I think. What do
That's
we
right.
got?
That is, and this is just so you have to intentionally prioritize your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we've alluded that into all of these, but just to be very specific and clear, um, it has to, your relationship with the Lord and your relationship with your spouse, those are the two most important decisions you make every day.
Yeah.
And that means that, in my case, when a parishioner calls and there's a perceived emergency and I'm having conflict with my bride, you know what? My bride comes first, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Or and I think that I've modeled that in our marriage and in my work life. And Yeah, it doesn't mean you're irresponsible. Don't use that as an excuse to be irresponsible at all.
Sure.
But Susan always has known that our relationship, that she's not, that the church isn't a mistress, right? That she knows that if she ever calls, she wins.
Yeah.
Except Sunday morning between 11 and when I'm preaching. I'm joking. But right, I mean, that's what I would say. What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for nothing gives a child more security than to see that or her parents in a loving relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's not only the benefit of having the loving relationship and all of the joy that it brings you and your spouse, but also the byproduct of having kids that grow up with a belief in marriage and the goodness of God, and that this is what they want as well.
Yeah.
Uh, because there's no greater thing that we can do than to love the Lord and to love our family.
For sure.
And to those who aren't blessed with this relationship of marriage, because it's a gift that God gives. Um, so we don't want to, for those who haven't been blessed with this gift, we don't want to in any way undermine their experiences. But for those who've been called into a marital relationship, it has to be the most important human relationship that you have. And
Yeah.
and there isn't a close second, even children.
Yeah. Right.
Now, we can have our whole other conversation about children and the value of family.
Yeah.
Susan rightly said that the kids' greatest blessing will be a strong marriage of their mom and dad.
Absolutely. I can think of, so many times when I've had that foundation, and knowing that I had that foundation, I was able to put sort of, okay, I have this decision to make, or I have to choose this, or I have to choose my spouse. And like being able to admit to yourself that, okay, it's either one or the other, and purposefully choosing instead of instinctually choosing based on what your values are, it makes things a lot more clear, right? So to have that intention, to make that decision that my spouse comes before every other human relationship, just vital. It's so practical to move through the complexities when the main relationships that you have. So I think that's so helpful.
I want to just kind of bring this back, and that is Susan and I have a really strong relationship, but I came from a family of origin where my parents were divorced, and it was an ugly divorce. In all profession, I can say this professionally, it was an ugly divorce. So had no great model of marriage. Susan was blessed with a wonderful model of marriage,
Yeah.
and so we maybe we're able to have this top 10 list because we had to be intentional about me undoing the things I had learned growing up.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
then Susan gently helping us figure out what it means for Jeff and Susan. And so if I don't want anyone to perceive that we started out with this idyllic, everything was perfect, because there was a lot of unlearning I had to do, and then a lot of stuff Susan had to do intentionally because her folks just did it, and so she just
Yes.
assumed you just do it,
Yeah.
and so we both had to stretch ourselves and discover what the dance is going to look like for Jeff and Susan.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say that this isn't without effort and energy that we had to put towards our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, this comes with a lot of trial and error over the course of 35 years, a lot of communication, a lot of commitment to each other, and a lot of like, man, that didn't work. Finding out what does work for you two and your relationship, which is going to be different than everybody else's. But it's done in we're gonna fight for each other, and we're gonna figure this out together type of environment, I think is what you're saying. Well, Jeff and Susan, this has been a lot of fun. I think all of those are super, super helpful. I know that they're unique to you guys, but I see them all being so relevant for my relationship and for so many relationships that I work with. So thanks for your wisdom in this, and thank you so much again for being here and sharing your relationship and what you have found helpful over the years. So thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for asking us to be part of it.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
I hope this was really helpful for you. Don't forget to comment which marriage hack you want to start today. Please leave me a review if you found this helpful, and go and get the 7 Deadly Sins of Marriage Communication. Link in the description. Thank you, and I hope that you are able to build a life-giving marriage for you and your spouse.